All right, everyone, thank you for being here. I'm going to introduce you to Justin Greeley. He works for Oregon Ballistic Laboratories, and he's going to go ahead and take it away.
So this is our range. My name is Justin Greeley. I'm a senior senior engineer and blast test coordinator. It's a little different with nobody else in the room. So right now, what you're looking at is what we call range 1. It's actually been heavily modified recently, and it's still a little bit under construction. Normally it's significantly louder in here with construction and then with testing. So my history is I started at a community college up in the Portland area, Clackamas Community College. Went there for a couple of years and then transferred down to Oregon State. Went to school there for about a year and a half until I ran out of money and found a dead-end job for a while. That wasn't ideal, obviously. So then I ended up joining the Marine Corps and doing some time there for a little bit until I actually got injured and sent home, and that actually ended up paying for the rest of my school, which I then completed. I wasn't always in this line of work. I started in HVAC, which is not fun, but there's lots of work. So depending on where you want to go and what you want to do, eventually I ended up here just applying online. So I've been here 15 years since then. So it's been a long time and I've made a career out of this. So obviously that schooling is really piecemeal and not exactly ideal. So that's my history. And what I do here is primarily I run the blast testing program, and I do all of the electronic data collection in different various forms, whether it's high-speed video, recording accelerations, pressures, different things, temperatures, from all kinds of tests. In addition, we do a lot of designing and building of our own equipment. For example, the tube you see behind me there was designed here in that box as well. All that is designed and built here on site, other than the tube was manufactured. But a lot of those plates were cut, assembled, and welded together here by our staff. We have several engineers here on staff. I'm a mechanical engineer. We have a couple of civils. We have another mechanical engineer and an aerospace engineer all on staff here, as well as some rotating people that come in from time to time, and actually some just regular old folks that end up doing some engineering type work. So the primary role of what we do here at Oregon Ballistic Laboratories is ballistic, blast, forced entry, and other destructive testing primarily. So our primary focus, by the name Oregon Ballistic Laboratories, is ballistic testing. So you see what we have here right there behind me is a set of armor. This is what would be worn on, for example, like a Humvee gunner. We test a lot of armor like this for manufacturers that are selling it to the military. Our primary workload is police body armor. We actually have a contract to do we shoot all of the NYPD armors and several other manufacturers. We are certified to do testing for any and all police body armor that meet the National Institute of Justice requirement. There's standards that get put out. We get certified. We are a certified 17025, which probably none of you know what that means, but it's a voluntary laboratory certification for quality. So, and it's a very stringent requirement. It has to do with training, calibration, and dealing with errors that happen in the course of testing. So it's a very stringent requirement. There are not many laboratories in the world that have it. And so we're one of a handful. In addition, we do a lot of blast testing, which is my particular role. This other set of armor here you see on the side, that one actually we tested for a mine blast. It is for like bomb squad type bomb removal. Anyways, the test sets it up. We put it on a crash test dummy, which you see behind me there. That one has instruments in it. When we do the blast testing, we tend not to have instruments on that one. But that has actually undergone a blast. You'll see this visor here is very much blackened. And that passed just fine. But the dummy you see behind me there, that actually has 40 channels of data that we collect on it for actual blast testing. This one, the last test that it was in, we had, I don't know if you're familiar with what a Connex box is, but it's a big storage container about 40 feet long that was converted for office space that is for use on refineries, so oil refineries and things. And sometimes they're concerned that those things might explode. And so this is an office space that is up armored and designed to withstand that kind of a blast. That's where he was last, and he did just fine. So other people outside of the contained unit would not be so lucky, but that's the way that goes. In addition, we have a lot of the tools that we use, many of which I did not learn in engineering school. There's a few basic tools. The multimeter, I learned that in all over the place, but then we start getting into much more. I use this all the time, by the way, troubleshooting and fixing wires and things. But other tools that we'll use include pressure sensors. This is what's called a pencil probe. You'll notice it says bad on it. It is broken. I tend to show these because it doesn't matter when I'm handing around to students when they're in person. It doesn't matter if they drop it, because these are $1,200, so we don't want to break them. Other sensors that we'll use. This is an accelerometer. I don't know if you can see that little tiny guy. He will measure up to 2,000 Gs. We put these a lot in vehicles when we're testing and blowing them up. That crash test dummy with all of his data collection will be in there also many times. So that's, we didn't have any dummies in the last vehicle test we did, which is probably a good thing. It didn't do very well. But they come in a lot of shapes and sizes. For example, this is one accelerometer. Here, let me pop this guy open. This is another. So you see the difference in size. This is teeny, teeny, tiny. This one will actually measure 20,000 Gs. It's designed to be low weight so that it doesn't affect any natural frequencies or other things you're measuring. One of the workhorses of our testing program here is this. We've got all these sensors all over. How do you read them? How do you know what it's saying? Well, they'll export a digital signal, which is typically a voltage output, and this thing will record it. This one will record 32 channels of data at up to 100,000 samples a second. And it's designed to ride in a vehicle during a crash test. So we put them on the vehicle during a blast. They're remarkably similar. As far as our ballistic testing capabilities go, we shoot from 22 and several other pistol rounds. These are 22, 9mm, 44 mag, super common and easy. We do these all the time. Then we step up a level for some of the heavier body armors. This is a 308, 30-06, and a 338 Lapua. We don't use this one very much. There's not a lot of standards that govern it. And then we get into the fun stuff. For example, the 50 caliber 14.5mm machine gun and the 25mm machine gun. That is big. Just for reference, put them next to each other. That is a 9mm and the 25mm round. So we shoot all of those in our facility, indoors even. Actually, this tube is designed specifically to contain those up to that 25mm shot. So there is a lot of tools and different moving parts. I think right now I'm going to show some video of some of the testing that we actually do. So I'm going to try and share my screen and see how that goes. Let's get into... Right now we're going to show some videos of some testing done. This is a test we did on a self-sealing fuel coating liner, which actually our boss helped invent. So this is actually a 30 caliber bullet going right on into that. And you see a little wisp of the fuel coming out right there. And then that entire thing seals up nice and tight. It cuts a little channel through there, and there's an activated ingredient inside the coating that'll actually swell and create a plug. This was useful when in theater, well, more than 15 years ago, because this happened before I started, but they were having problems with fuel tankers in Iraq, Afghanistan, getting shot up. They would shoot up the side of it, it would be leaking, and then they'd light the fuel would catch fire to the thing, and the whole deal would go to the ground. And that's a problem. And so they were looking at a couple of possibilities. One was up-armoring the entire unit, and that would actually mean that you could only carry a half load of fuel, if that, because of the weight capacity of the trailer. This is another solution. It doesn't add much weight at all. And since you don't actually care if there's bullets in there, because there's no people inside the tank, then it didn't matter if bullets went in, you just didn't want fuel to come out. So this was a solution they came up with. Let's see. Another one, this is actually one of my videos that I made a long time ago. Actually, it's dated at 2010. This is actually what's called a mild steel core penetrator. It's something like an AK-47 type bullet, but you see it hitting a plate of steel. You see that copper jacket just get shed off, and then this make that little rose petal thing. You can see it's still spinning from the rifling of the barrel. So I actually just like that video because I think it's neat, but that's not what we want. The next one is, this one is a test we did for somebody looking to do some testing. So this is what's called a ballistic gelatin, and this is a different one than usually what you see on a ballistic gelatin. If you'd seen, a lot of times what they'll use is stuff they have to freeze. This is a different kind that's a clear kind that actually, so we actually watch that bullet penetrate into that ballistic gelatin. Now you can see these spirals that it's showing there. I don't know if my mouse shows up, but you should be able to see those spirals there. That is actually spirals from the petaling of the bullet cutting into that thing. And you'll see that void at the beginning. If we run it to about there, that is nearly 6 inches across of open space that bullet has opened up in that material. So word to the wise is don't get shot because it does bad things to you. All right, here we've got a couple here. This is, I believe this is a body armor test. And some of these we have to, yeah, so this is what's called a hard plate body armor. It's something like would, well, I was going to show you, but I'm sharing my screen right now. So this is what would be known as hard plate, and it is for, it's for rifles is what it's for. So this is a rifle round going in and hitting that. You see that thing just blasts all this stuff out. I don't know if the lighting's very good on that video. The issue is when you're recording video at that kind of speed, where this was probably recorded at about 30,000 frames a second, really, really fast, requires lots and lots of lights because your exposure time is so short. So, and what you see here, all this white stuff coming out is chunks of ceramic, like what plates might be made of, like at home on your dishes. But this is obviously higher tech stuff. But this technology is actually primarily what keeps a lot of those plates weighing. They're not just running with a 1/2-inch steel plate on their chest. They're using these ceramics combined with some other things and some composite materials. So this would be a ceramic coating over something like a Kevlar backing. So the ceramic will break up and slow down the bullet, and then the Kevlar will catch it as it comes in. Now, if you guys were here on site, we could show you some shooting, but we're not really set up for that right now. As a note, if teachers are interested and feel comfortable, we are okay if you come and visit us sometimes. We just need some notice to make sure we're not having something going on that our customer does not want people to see, because some of them are very secretive about their equipment. So this is another of that self-sealing fuel coating liner. So we'll get this going. This is that round coming in. We can back that up. So this is coming in. This is another 30 caliber bullet, probably at, well, this is recorded at 15,000 frames a second. You can see that point of impact right there. Then it goes in, you see that opening. It closes up. You see a little wisp of fuel. Right there's that wisp of fuel coming out. And then that thing will just seal up. There are, however, drawbacks to some of these coatings. For example, this is another one where there was a thin area on the tank. So the main area of the tank is just fine. The thin areas, this is actually an exit wound from the bullet. We shot through a thinner area. So this is it exiting from the back side. Just notice that that bullet's coming out backwards and then spinning. But then as we advance that video, you see that it just starts splashing fuel everywhere. You'll notice that it actually takes a while to come out. That's because when that round penetrates into that fuel, it actually temporarily creates a void where it pushes all of that fuel away. There's massive pressure spikes inside that unit when that happens. And then as that comes, we see that was a mess we had to clean up is what that was. So, but like I said, that self-seating fuel co-lighter, when you're shooting a big tank, there's no chance that the round will come through, but this one was maybe about 6 inches thick at that particular point. So in those cases, what they will actually do is they have some technology where they will actually up armor that portion of the tank so that when it comes out, it actually hits armor and stops, but you just have to do like a small piece like corners and that sort of thing. So that's some ballistic video. We have some blast video. I got a bunch of these, and it looks like I've got maybe 5 or 10 minutes left to talk. So we'll try to get some of these quickly. This one is some of our larger scale blasts. This one is a fun one. So this is, I would have to hazard a guess and say that's about 1,800 pounds on this piece of, now this piece of concrete is 16 feet by 16 feet bolted onto this big structure. And it's roughly about a foot thick. And so then we will actually blow it up. So that never gets old. Sorry you don't have the sound on here because you're hearing my boring voice, but on this, you can see a lot of things. One, there's a lot of dust out there. But as this goes up, you see that initial flash. That's a bit of a lens flare caused by the initial charge going off. Then you see that it basically blasts instantly. You can actually see, if you look at the bottom half of the screen, where all of that grass and dust is being kicked up as you see that pressure wave come towards the camera. Then we scroll on. But if you look at that, with that big charge at about 40 feet, everything there is fine. You see some cracking here on the sides of it.
Hello,
but that's
I
it.
want to show you real quick.
Get some more stuff going. This is, I don't know what this one is. Okay. So this is testing we did for a fragment plate on something. So it's essentially like a mine. They wanted to know what the frag pattern looked like. So this one has some interesting things going on. Let me back her up. This one shows when that initial charge goes off, you see that flash from the bomb going off. And then you see all of these pellets. Now, if you look at the edge where the wood starts, you can actually see that rippling effect. That is the air pressure blast wave coming in. And then right now you can see those pellets starting to hit. There are little flashes that pop up on the OSB there. Then as it comes in, you start to see some interesting things like this stuff is waving and rippling all over the place and then gets shredded right there. But as it all gets blown off. But this is a test we did that was kind of, they wanted to know what it would pattern like at different distances. So then it just gets blown apart. But we did a bunch of those tests. This is a fun one we did. We were testing that self-sealing fuel coating liner for ballistic sealant. Now you'll notice the tank is not very big right here in the middle. And it did not seal very well. Because what happened is the superheated rounds blew through the whole thing. And on the backside of those exit wounds, you had aerosol fuel with the super hot rounds and it just ignited the whole thing. And then it just burns. So out there, the safest thing to do is just let it burn, and we're documenting the actual event there. See, this is a fun one because it's a vehicle blast. So we are seeing a vehicle get blown up here. Once this loads. All right, so this is a shot we did. Underneath, there's a mine underneath that vehicle. It's already been blown up once because the tire's missing on that on the rear. But that is that blast wave here. This is a fun video because you can see so many things going on. And this is all armor. You can actually watch, if you're looking at the roof of that vehicle, you can see that steel flexing all over the place. things get really pliable when they're moving this fast. That blast wave coming out, and mostly gets clouded pretty quick with all that dirt and debris. But that would be a mine test that we would do. And there, I don't know if we had them on this one, but this is the kind of test that we would have the crash test dummies ride inside the vehicle for. And then we would know what the occupants would experience during that event. Let's see. I'm actually going to move on. The rest of those aren't super interesting, except to me. So then some of our other testing. For example, we've had some people come in working on different firing apparatus. This one actually is a cutaway video of a suppressor. I don't know if you guys can see this very well, but a manufacturer that makes suppressors came in with this unit and wanted to see what was going on inside. So it was milled out, and we're looking actually inside the unit here. And then we get to see that, all of that stuff going on. So I'll run it again. Why are we not running? There we go. So I'll back that up and we're on frame by frame. So you see actually, as all the gases are coming out, you see the round is exiting the end of the barrel right now. And those gases are coming around. So you can see another shot of the round right there. As it comes in, interesting thing about this particular one is that there's none of that flame actually exits the end of the barrel as we're watching it come out. It just is recirculating inside, which is actually really good for them, for that suppressor. So just a bit of information. Suppressors don't actually make things silent. Movies aren't real. The gold standard in suppressor technology is to make that gun so quiet that it doesn't instantly and permanently cause hearing damage when you shoot it. And that's about it. So another fun test that I got to involved in, this is all in the other testing category, by the way. This is, I actually went to Mexico for a test series where they were wanting to crash a 727 and record some video off of that. So because the pilots and the people controlling the aircraft actually missed the landing, where there was many, many cameras set up, there's just this one helicopter camera. So in this video, you see this 727 that's been remotely piloted by this little tiny plane next to it. And on this test, I have 3 crash test dummies running about 96 channels of data total across the whole thing. It was actually triggered by the impact of the plane hitting the ground. This records in what's called the circular buffer. So it's always overwriting its original, whatever was in the memory of the unit. When that memory in the unit fills up, for example, say you're recording 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds it starts back at 0, just overwrites and overwrites until it receives a trigger signal. In this case, the trigger signal is the airplane hitting the ground. So that caused it to send a signal to our unit. So if it was recording and it was at 2.5 seconds, when it got that signal, it'll record for another 7.5 seconds, and you've got your data. So this is it coming down. They cut the safety report to make sure. We had to do it in Mexico because they wouldn't let anybody crash a plane on purpose in the United States. And it's a selection where if it went on forever and ever, it would actually run into the mountains. So it can go anywhere we didn't want it to. This one was actually a very cool test. So that was, some of you may or may not have actually seen this. I don't know how much this video, because the Discovery Channel actually put this out as a documentary series. And they drummed up a little bit of drama for it. But this actually happened, where that plane hit that ground. That whole front half of that thing snapped off. You can actually see the landing gear coming up behind the wing and back over the top of it. It comes forward and just snaps the tip of that plane right off. Now, there was nobody in this aircraft. This was all, the only thing in it was basically dummies, and that's it. They picked this particular aircraft because the 727 has a unique feature, which you don't actually get to see in this video, in that there is a stairwell that runs right out the back between those engines. So they found a pilot that used to fly these commercially. They haven't flown 727s in a very long time. So he was an older gentleman, and some very experienced parachuters. So these, I don't know if you can see, but basically this engine on the side, and then there's one on the other side, and just right out the middle, down the bottom, is a stairway that goes right out the back. You ever heard of D.B. Cooper? That's the plane that he jumped out of in that particular style. This older gentleman that was flying the airplane, his very, very first parachute jump ever was a tandem jump out the back of a 727. So, and then they remote piloted it for a while and crashed it. So we actually collected all of our data on this. And fun fact, you can't really see it through dust. We'll go through some of this video. A lot of it's very slow. And then you see those engines are still running. It's blasting a bunch of this stuff off the ground. If you can see it very well. That's the front of the aircraft, and then it zooms out. You see that cockpit in the back, where those engines are just cooking that. So that would be a bad day to be the pilot of that aircraft. Part of the requirements for this, there was a bunch of environmental requirements. That desert had to look like nothing was there. In a week, came in, chopped up that plane, cleaned up the desert, and we were done afterward. So if we back up to here, my crash is actually inside where there is no floor or airplane anymore. A couple of shots of that. So we will close this up for now. I have these guys here. So this is a series of shots coming up to the aircraft. I didn't actually get out to it till the next day because the data collection, or it just wasn't there. So you see, this is the floor just inside there where I'm standing on the ground in dirt, taking pictures of my crash test dummy where his feet are not on anything. The one behind him has floor, but this one is just kind of hanging loose with nothing holding them up. That's from the side. And that's where the cockpit ended up in really bad shape. So let's see what else we have. That's the video, net launch rifle cycling. So some other testing that we've done. This is another one, manufacturer that makes custom rifle parts. Wanted to see things. So this is a lot of what high-speed cameras get used for. It's a little bit less exciting than explosions, but we're just watching things cycle because you want to see what's going on, because if it's not working correctly, you want to know why. And so they'll watch these parts move around. Now, we're looking at a rifle, but this actually works with any and all equipment. These high-speed videos are used in production facilities, any number of things, bottling facilities. They're just watching things move. And if something's going wrong, they don't know what it is because everything's moving real fast. So they'll actually put these high-speed videos on and watch all kinds of things. We'll go to that net launcher real quick. So this is a test we did for a company that made, oh, it doesn't like that format of video. All right. So we did it for a manufacturer that makes they were trying to find a way, because in theater, over where they're battling and stuff, they have people that are standing in, say, bus stops. As the American caravans are driving by, they're throwing grenades at the vehicles. Well, they have two options at that particular point: ignore it and just kind of hope you don't die, or turn the big machine guns on them and light them up. Unfortunately, they like to stand in crowds of people, so they're really hesitant to want to do that. This gave them another option, which was not do nothing or shoot everyone. So they actually work a lot on these types of things, because when you're in those sorts of situations, it's hard to decide what to do. So this one is another option. This actually got tested at my house. So this is a net launcher that you set it off and it throws this net out. Now this was recorded, this is obviously high-speed video, it's not actually moving this slow. And it'll just launch this net out, instantly open it. And then that's kind of what the theory is. And then we have a video of it in practice. Now, this is a person who got about 5 minutes of instruction and had never used this before. It was somebody on the base that we were borrowing the Humvee from. And we're recording this high-speed video as the truck is coming up. You see the grenade coming in. It's got a little parachute at it, so it points, the grenade point at it. They made us cover the Humvee with all that stuff because they didn't want us launching even dead grenades at it. So you'll see that net come up, and it just grabs that grenade and then ties it up. Now, that doesn't necessarily stop the grenade from going off. So it's going to still be in that group of people and go off, but grenade was going off anyway when somebody threw it. So that was kind of an interesting technology that we worked on that tried to be some form of a less lethal response to machine gun fire. So let me get back, see if I can get back into the not sharing the screen. All right, where is the button that says unshare the screen.
Check at the top of your screen. There should be like a red button.
Stop share. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So hopefully I'm back and you guys can see me. Those are just a few of the videos. I just tried to select a few to keep it down to, like I said, I can easily fill an hour with all kinds of stuff. And I actually prefer the interactive question and answer when we have students in person, but that's not really an option right now. So do we have, maybe we should just open up into the question and answer phase so people can get some stuff out. All right, it looks like there's a question, when will the meeting end? I think we're good. I think we're scheduled till, I think it's 9:50, if I'm correct. So that is, all right. So I've actually just popped open the question and answer panel that somebody put one in. There was a question that said, do we make the bombs we use for testing? Yes, actually we do. We have a series of licenses from ATFE. A lot of people might just refer to them as ATF. It's Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives Organization. And we have a series of licenses that allow us to possess, use, and possess and use high explosives, as well as build and detonate destructive devices, which is literally anything that's bigger than a 50 cal rifle. That would be, or we build a lot of grenades. I didn't actually bring any grenade tested panels here, but we do a lot of basically building grenades, building mines. Those big, large charges on that concrete panel was 1,800 pounds. We actually built that, but that actually kind of stacks more like feed bags than anything else. Let's see.
All right.
My favorite test that I've done in there is that we, let's see, my favorite test was, I don't know, the airplane test was really fun. It was really nice in Mexico that time of year, which was cold at home. And that was a really interesting test because we had nothing like that had ever been done before. The test that we did is the most successful powered test, aircraft crash test ever performed. The second most successful, there was about a few seconds of video. They were testing a fuel gelling thing. Anyways, they were flying an airplane between two poles remotely to cut off the wings to basically demonstrate that this new fuel wouldn't catch fire, but they missed. And when they cut the wings off of that aircraft, they cut it through the engine after the gelled fuel had been aerosoled already, and it all went up in a fireball. So next question I see on here, what did I do in college to get this job? Nothing. This job is a fairly unique job, and I feel like actually I got more into this job because of some of the military service that I did, which was short-lived and not specifically bomb-centric. But we have a number of people that work here, and there's no college that I know of that prepares. You know, there's a few colleges that deal with blasting. I know Penn State has some courses in it, and there's a few other, Wayne State, a lot of them in the Midwest, but Wayne State has a person that I've worked with, Cindy Burr, on that aircraft thing. They do a lot of injury mechanic stuff. She's done some shows where they do sports injuries type analysis on things. But as far as college directly to get into here, there isn't one. Now that you mentioned college, I would like to speak to one thing. For those considering engineering, go to Oregon State, get in the MECOP program. The MECOP program is the best program for engineers going to school. It takes you an extra year to graduate. Instead of 4 years, it takes 5. But in that 5, there's the 2 six-month internships. And those are at 2 different facilities. More often than not, you'll graduate with a job offer in 1 or 2 of those positions, as well as a year of experience, which is, you have no idea how valuable just having experience on your resume is. Most of you will be fantastic workers once you graduate college. However, engineers have a hard time selling themselves often, and you end up having a hard time getting the job. If they'd let you in the door and see you work, they would love you, but just getting that thing, it's a big risk that people take hiring. So a lot of times it's difficult. How do you get fields like this? This field, it's difficult to break into because it's such a small industry. A lot of times, most of the people that are working here because they know somebody. So networking is key. Now, you guys know somebody in this industry. So if you're interested and you're going to school, whatever, we do internships. If you're looking for some work and while you're going to school, other times, just hit people up. We're the primary facility for this on the West Coast. There are a number of other facilities in the Southwest and a ton on the East Coast. Still, the blast section is a little less, but the ballistic they do a lot of. In addition, they have there's others. I know of a place in Southern California that does tons and tons and tons of vehicle crash testing, which is very similar. A lot of the same skills in data collection. In fact, the person that taught me everything I know about data collection is a crash test expert. So Oregon Ballistic is located in Salem, Oregon, is our main office where I'm actually talking to you from right now. Is our office is in Salem. And then in the, we also have facilities. We have one in the Coast Range Mountains outside of Falls City, where we drive up in those logging roads and there's an old quarry. We do some blasting. That's about an hour and a half away from our offices. And then we have another facility we use out in Bend that does, we do a lot. That's where our large scale blasting is. That's where you saw that large concrete panel we blasted. And that's about 4 hours away from here. It's 30 miles east of Bend. Let's see, how does MECOP affect scholarships? That I do not know. I am a huge proponent of the MECOP program, but because of my piecemeal way that I went to school, I was unable to get into the program. I will push it like I'm on their payroll though, because it's a fantastic program. General requirements that we look for in an employee. My requirements are different than a lot of other people's requirements. I want an employee that has done something in their life. You show up with a degree, sure. You want to be an engineer? Everyone's got a degree. What else have you done? Have you done something outside of yourself? Have you tried to master a skill or something that was, for example, you might have gone to school for engineering, but in your hobby, are you a machinist, a welder, something that you took on and did yourself? Have you decided to serve in the military, done something, just basically anything that's shown some initiative that you have decided to do something and just went and did it, because initiative is highly valued here. So that's one. Primarily what we're looking for employees though is people that are ready to work. For example, we have a few engineers on staff, but most of our staff is not engineers. And I don't know if they're gonna be mad at me for telling this, but the older I get, the more I look at career paths, and college is not necessarily for everyone. However, education is. So if you don't feel like sitting in a classroom for hours and hours and analyzing data for hours, or any number of things that you're doing that is pretty still and not moving, you want to work with your hands and do things, there's a ton of things. For example, when I'm in here, I'm doing a lot of data analysis. When I'm out in the field, I'm working with my hands. We're building things, setting things up. So there's engineering that can be moving like that. But however, if tons of school is not your thing and tons of math specifically for engineering, there are what I like to call engineering adjacent professions that are fantastic. Welders, machinists, electricians, any of these things that are skilled laborers that make tons of money without necessarily going to college. So trades are definitely not a bad thing that I look down on anyway. The lab is located Salem, Oregon. I think I answered that one. I've had students that lost their scholarship. Oh, yeah. I did not. That's an answer, not a question. But yeah, they've had scholarships that have been lost due to MECOP. So there's that. MECOP might make up for the scholarship depending on what you're doing, because it would actually, because those internships that you get through MECOP are paid internships. So. All right, my questions are going all over the place. Let's see, have I worked with any aerospace ballistic testing? We have aerospace. We have tested some armor layups that are intended for aircraft, or primarily helicopters. We've actually done some ballistic testing on helicopter blades. was an interesting one. They had some samples of some materials that they made the blade up. Some were some corrugated composite fibers. Some of them were actually just wood, and wood actually survives surprisingly well. Basically, we would be shooting through them and, excuse me, seeing how much structural integrity they've been maintained. So that's a little bit of aerospace ballistic testing. In fact, some of our, we actually did some testing for some fuel tanks that go inside of a cargo aircraft. So we had to shoot it and then pressurize it as though the aircraft were going up into the air and then coming back down. So we were kind of leaking pressure out of it and pushing pressure into it, depending on what elevation the aircraft would be at. So.
All right, sorry for cutting in.
What's that?
I'm sorry for cutting in, but I have a list of questions for you actually. And
oh, let me turn my speakers up. I can't hear you very well.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, so sorry for cutting in, but I have a list of questions for you. And before you go, I will introduce myself. My name is Chow. I'm a senior at McKay High School, and I'm really glad to have an opportunity to represent the student here to ask some questions for you. And what qualities do you think make a good engineer?
What qualities make a good engineer? Like I said before, some of the qualities we look at for employees are things like people that are self-starters. If you are given a task and you go and you finish the task and then you stare off into space for a while until somebody else tells you what to do, that is less useful. It's more helpful if you have a task, you go, you complete it, then come back and ask for more. Another one is people that are willing to ask for help. Sometimes in interviews, there are trick questions, and it's not a bad thing to say that you don't know the answer. And many times, sometimes we've had interviews where we've specifically asked someone questions until we got them to say they didn't know and seen how long it takes, because we know that some of it's very specific to our industry. Like, I don't know, but I can look it up or I can find out. That's a valid answer. And because if you're willing to admit some faults, no one is a perfect person or employee or anything. So that's one thing. But self-starters and self-motivators, people that are willing to work. I am personally, this might be a little off, but I'm looking for people that are mentally strong, right? Sometimes we had a company that came in with another employee. I'm like, yeah, that guy's not going to work out. He's weak. And they're like, what do you mean? He's huge. Yes, he is huge. He's very physically strong. That's irrelevant. You can train that. You can learn that. You can leverage your way around whatever you need to do. But if you're not mentally strong, you can't. So for example, the testing industry is extremely taxing. We're working 10, 12, 16, 18. I worked a 40-hour day one time because that's what had to be done. Like 40 hours, only 24. Yeah, it was a day and a half. I was on shift all the time working. And some people can't handle that. And that's perfectly fine. This industry is not necessarily for them. That's a little outrageous. Nowadays, we don't go much more than 12. But other times when I'm in the office working, it's regular 8-hour days. But out in the field, you're in the field and doing the job till the job is done. And that's not necessarily something that everybody likes. In other cases, there's short days. We go out there, we do one shot, we're done, we head home. So there's a little bit of a mix, and definitely being able to work long hours at times is necessary on this.
Whatever said, how much work at the lab helps with solving crimes? Does it happen often? If so, how successful are you?
Sorry, my speakers are not very loud on this machine. Hopefully my sound is coming through okay, but I'm not hearing you very well.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there it is. Okay, now go ahead. Can you ask that again?
A person in the chat said that how much work at the lab helps with solving crimes? Does that happen often? If so, how successful are you?
Sorry, my speakers are, but I'm missing that first part. If so, how often does what happen? I'm not missing that. I'm missing that first part.
How much work at the lab helps with solving crime?
Oh, how much work at the lab helps with solving crime? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Oh, okay. We've done not a lot. Most of our work is preventative, almost exclusively armor. We've done some other few things. It's basically stopping for stopping rounds or stopping blasts from hurting people. We have done very small amount. I've done some gunshot testing, gunshot residue testing on a case that got, we'll say, mishandled, in that an individual was shot and they suspected suicide. They wrote suicide on the thing. Case closed, done. Well, there was some extenuating circumstances on that, and the person was essentially washed and prepared for burial before, for example, a gunshot residue test was done on their hand. So we were hired to come in and actually test some of the clothing or check some of the clothing because they didn't find anything on the clothing that they tested after the fact. So we did a several series of ballistic tests where we would take the same firearm, shoot it, and then test our clothing for gunshot residue to see if it would be present. And so that was one thing that we had worked on. So that was kind of an interesting one. We've worked on another case where they were trying to question whether or not a suppressor actually worked very well or not. That case, that suppressor did not work very well. I don't know any more to the details on that case other than that's what somebody was hinging some argument on. And so there's not very much that we get into that. We're always looking to expand. I know the boss would love to have an entire forensics analysis thing set up because currently there aren't that many labs that do it. It's hard to get into, and there is a long waiting period on all that processing, which slows down a whole lot of things.
Has quarantine caused your job to be more difficult?
What's more difficult?
Has quarantine caused your job to be more difficult? Like during quarantine, because since it's pandemic time.
Oh, yeah, no, not really. Most of my work is, because of my specific role in the company, is very solo. So I spend a lot of time locked up in my office, which is right up there, and by myself. In addition, because of what I'm doing, whether I'm out in the field or at home or here at the office, most of what I need other than the actual blast testing, I need my computer and I need some power and I need an internet connection. So I've been able to work from home a lot when I can. And then out in the field, we're outside pretty well separated. Hasn't been an issue. We've been running full steam the whole time. So there's not been an issue where we were forced to shut down. We were considered, I think, whatever the term is important workers or whatever. So actually that was one of the huge blessings for us, is we specifically were not shut down at all. So there was no real financial impact.
So how do you know if engineering is for you? And like, how do you pick a specific field?
I wish my friend Brian was here. He actually he used to work for us, and then he moved away and then moved back, but he's working for another company and that we work with often. He ended up going into manufacturing engineering. And he's an interesting person because he did not have an engineering aim when he graduated high school. He had no aim at all, actually. He was kind of just a layabout, not doing much of anything, until he realized that his life was not, a few years after high school, his life was exactly the same as just after high school, and he wanted more. So he decided to start taking classes at the local community college. And when he took a class that he liked, he'd be like, okay, I like this class. Okay, I don't like these classes. And he used that process to narrow it down into an engineering field. He built a process, an analytical process to get there. Now, the fact that he did that alone is actually directing him towards engineering, because that's kind of what you're doing, especially as a manufacturing engineer. You're developing a process to make something. In this case, he found out that he liked the math classes and the science classes and didn't like the writing classes. And so, not that there's not a ton of writing in engineering, but it's technical writing, it's not creative, it's a different kind of thing. But he developed a process that led him to an engineering field that develops processes. So that was really one of the best examples of one that I've seen. But for the most part, engineering school taught me how to think, how to analyze the situation and figure out what the issue is, what the problem is, because a lot of what I'm doing is troubleshooting, and very little of what I'm doing in the field for the blast testing is actual mechanical engineering. I'm not designing parts. I've designed parts before, and I designed a clay oven, I designed a few other things that we use around the facility, but for the most part, that's not the primary part of my role. And so engineering is a way of thinking about things that you learn, and especially if you got an aptitude for it, there's tons and tons and tons of math that you'll have to get through. So if math is not your thing at all, probably go someplace else. I had a roommate that was wanted to go into computer engineering. He failed statics 3 times in a row. He changed his major to computer science. And he did just fine. But if math isn't your thing, don't go for it. If math is hard for you, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. But if you hate it, it's not going to work.
Can you talk about a time that you failed at something but learned from the experience?
Oh, we fail things all the time. Yeah. A recent example is we were doing a large scale blast test, and I had all of my instruments plugged in and connected, and everything was fantastic. But our trigger line, when the bomb goes off, we have a wire that we put on the bomb that when that wire breaks, that sends a signal to all my data collection to collect data. What happens when you test when it's cold outside is that at times it's just speaker wire, right? Just basic normal speaker wire we're using. In that environment, as cold as it was, the blast actually shattered the insulation on the wire a ways down the line and caused other parts of the wire to twist or connect where the insulation would have normally separated them, because what we're looking for is that separation, the open circuit on that wire. It never opened because the insulation that kept the wires separated shattered, and so we didn't get any data on that test. That gives me ulcers because that's my whole job, is to collect data. And so we actually had to repeat that test, and we learned that we have to do with some of those tests, especially when it's cold outside, is we have to fully separate those lines, 10, 20 feet away from each other on separate sides of the target, all the way back to the target, rather than leaving them together until right at the charge. And we definitely learned that one the hard way.
All right, one more question. How do you balance your work life and your personal life?
Sometimes there's no balance at all. Sometimes, for example, sometimes in the summer, I go to work on Monday in Bend, and then I come home on Friday. That's hard. I make sure to take some vacation time. And then when I'm actually in town, I try to work from home at least once a week. But the work-life balance is actually super important. I'm glad you brought that up. Because, for example, I do okay working here. I could make twice as much money at other locations. However, we live right next door to my wife's parents on this big, huge property that's mostly timberland and trees. And so the kids have grandma and grandpa and great grandpa living there. And so they have a wonderful experience. And the fact that my wife's family is so close means that when I'm away, she's taken care of. So we try to balance it how we can. But sometimes the job calls for you. And other times, maybe I work 4 days a week and I put in 12 hours each of those days. Maybe I just don't work Friday and I just stay home. So, there's things like that. But we definitely try to make it, because we're a very small company, we have very limited resources as far as people are concerned. So sometimes the job is long, but other times it's like, okay, well, I don't need to be there. I'm not going in.
We're actually now reaching the end of the session. So,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you said it's the end of the session?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you like to?
You guys should have my email on that list if we need to get it out. I think if the contact on the NEPRIS is all there. So if you have further questions or anything, you can feel free to email me and I can respond with whatever. And then we'll see what all we can get, any more information. If teachers running classes would like to come on down, then please let me know and we can schedule some time to do a walkthrough. when that becomes available.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. If